Hi, my name is Sarah Marie Streed, and I am part of the creation care team at St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Milwaukee. I am presenting Getting Away from Plastic. I gave this presentation first during the season of creation in the Episcopal Diocese of Milwaukee. And that website has tons of good resources and materials to look at to help protect God's creation and to care for God's creation. You can find that at diomil.org. That's diomil.org. So let's get started with getting away from plastic. As you can see, I chose for my title picture a sea turtle with a plastic bag stuck in its mouth. Sea turtles can live up to 500 years. And we don't know how old this turtle is, but it looks in pretty good health. So who knows how many hundreds of years this sea turtle will be flying around or swimming around, birds of the sea. But yes, this sea turtle will be swimming around for hundreds of years with this plastic bag stuck in its mouth. The reason that sea turtles often try to eat plastic bags is because they appear in looks like a jellyfish in the ocean. So this is a common problem. Just one of many, many, many problems that plastic bags and all disposable single-use plastic brings to our world. Okay. What the church says. Why should you even care or try to change your plastic habit? Well, if you're a Christian and or a member of a church, the Episcopal Church says this: we crave and hoard what we do not need. We take and grasp what does not belong to us. We burden and dominate what was meant to be free. As a result, the planet and our most vulnerable neighbors suffer. This flows from our failure as human beings to live as the people made in an image of God. Many of God's people, especially our children, are in despair as they observe the frightening shifts in our environmental narrative. Climate change and environmental degradation are manifestations of our turning away from God. All areas of justice are either worsened or made better depending on the health of the planet. A changing climate and degraded environment worsen conflict, forces human migration, and causes food insecurity. These related crises increase the rate of violence, cause more natural disasters and humanitarian crises, and deepen the wounds of those already suffering from racism. People living in poverty are plunged further into poverty by the deteriorating condition of the planet. So this and the next slide are both from the House of the Bishops on Climate and Our Vocation in Christ. And that's from July 2022, but it's been even upgraded, but basically has the same sentences and same meaning in the July 2023 update. So to finish, confronting climate change and environmental degradation has never been more urgent. As members of the Episcopal Church, we are committed in baptism to resist evil, seek God's will, treat all people with dignity, and strive for justice and peace. If we hope to treat all human beings with dignity, we must address climate change so droughts, floods, and extreme weather patterns don't force people into exile and desperate life-threatening migration. If we hope to build peace, we must address climate change so that competition for scarce resources does not drive further violence. If we hope to ensure that every child of God has enough to eat, we must address climate change so that our bountiful earth can continue to support and sustain food systems that nourish people and the soil. We are a people of hope. We, God's faithful, are called to share the hope that will empower change. And let God's people say, Amen. So the facts. Here are the facts about plastic in our world. And it's important to know these facts so that we can see the problem clearly. So humans use 1.2 million plastic bottles per minute in the world. Approximately 91% of plastic is not, NOT, not recycled. And that goes along with recycling just doesn't work. Plastics recycling is a lie. This shockingly low recycling rate is a carefully constructed lie by the petrochemical industry. Why? So they can make money and continue to make money producing their single-use plastics. To continue with these facts, 5 trillion plastic bags are produced each year. And again, only 1% are recycled. 8 million tons of plastic ends up in the ocean every year. To go back to our cover slide with the sea turtle floating for hundreds of years with a plastic bag in his mouth. Almost every piece of plastic ever made still exists today. How can that be? Because plastic takes so long to decompose. In fact, we really don't know, and there's not even a really. In fact, we don't know how long it takes for an item of plastic to decompose, because we've only been making plastic since the 50s, and there hasn't 500 years, 1,000 years hasn't passed for us to see how long it takes. So the guesses are that each styrofoam cup takes about 500 years to decompose, and each plastic spoon takes about 1,000 years to decompose. Making plastic, so going to the beginning, making plastic has a huge carbon footprint. So if you start at the beginning, all plastic starts as a fossil fuel, and it comes from petrochemicals. So it comes from a fossil fuel, which is either gas or oil. This is a picture of a natural gas cracker plant where they crack the ethylene chemicals to get that initial start of plastic. So that, of course, doesn't look good. You can see by that. And it isn't good. So your water bottle, your grocery bag, your foam tray at the bottom of your cucumbers or your foods, it all started as a fossil fuel. So it starts as a fossil fuel, which is bad, and it also takes energy to turn this fossil fuel into your plastic product, your water bottle, your grocery bag, or your foam tray for your cucumbers. And so at every point in this entire process, from beginning to end, it is a fossil fuel. Michael Bloomberg, if you go down here to this quote, he spent $500 million to shut down coal and gas plants, and he plans and has committed to spending another $500 million to shut down these petrochemical plants that make plastics. And he's quoted, this last paragraph here says, if there's something that can destroy the earth and kill all living people, then it's hard to argue you shouldn't focus on that. I want my kids, your kids, to be able to have a life. And so that quote is putting it in the bare truth. Do we want our children, our grandchildren to have a life? well, then we've got to care about this, making plastic and the petrochemicals. And we've got to shut down fossil fuels. Oceans and lakes are an epidemic of plastic and waste. And they found microplastics in the intestine of whales and other sea creatures. We could see, here's a dolphin with a 6-pack ring in its mouth. We saw the sea turtle. It's all over the place. And this reminds me of the Episcopal prayer, which refers to the earth as, in the world, as our island home. And it is like we are on an island. But it's not just the oceans. William Shatner from Star Trek, he took the Jeff Bezos space shuttle in 2021 and went out into space and saw the Earth, that famous view of the Earth from space. And this is what he said upon his return. Everybody else was shaking bottles of champagne, and I didn't feel that way at all. I was in grief for the Earth. The juxtaposition of the cold, dark, bleak emptiness of space with the warm, nurturing Earth below. This gave William Shatner a view of the vulnerability of humanity and his fear that we are destroying our haven through pollution and climate change. And then to quote him again, I discovered that the beauty isn't out there, it's down here with all of us. End quote. So all of us Christians, we, like William Shatner, are trying to preserve our wonderful, nurturing world that's a gift from God. Microbeads are particles 5 milliliters or smaller, and these are created when plastics, larger plastics, soda bottles, for example, are broken down by the rays from the sun. And you can see the microbeads here and how small they are. They're on a forefinger of an adult person. They're just incredibly small. And these are absorbed by everything and everyone. They're absorbed by sea creatures. They're absorbed by birds. They become part of the food chain. In fact, there was a recent study done where breast milk, all breast milk was found to contain microbeads and microplastics. And it wasn't related to if the mother had gone swimming or went to a lake shore or drank a lot of water. It wasn't related to anything, just from living in this world. Breast milk contains microbeads and microplastics, all breast milk. So that is, and blood contains it. Literally everything that is on this earth contains microbeads and microplastic. So phthalates, this is pronounced phthalates, this PHTAHALATES word, is another word for plasticizer. And this is a group of chemicals, and it's added to products to make them basically soft and bendable or appealing. So if your child has a toy that bends, or let's say it's that plastic duck in the bathtub that you're able to squish and make a noise, that's because it contains phthalates or plasticizers. And of course, this is appealing. So businesses make their products with plasticizers. It makes them able to absorb paint, take coloring, work, do everything that they want to do. And this is just a list of some products that contain phthalates or plasticizers: toys, food packaging, vinyl flooring, wall coverings, detergents, lubricating oils, pharmaceuticals, blood bags and tubing, nail polish, aftershave, soap, shampoos, perfumes, shower curtains, garden hoses, and everything you see on this page, including what your baby is playing with, they all contain phthalates. Well, so plastics and human health. Of course, you can see, I'm sure, that it's terrible for your human health. They have multi-generational effects of exposure and are interrupting the fertility process. It's the phthalate DEHP, which is often added to shower curtains and garden hoses. Anyone used some of those recently? Has been stated to be a probable human carcinogen by the EPA. So, and they cause liver, immune system, and other cancers. So, we've been hearing about phthalates for years, or at least I have. But now the new word is PFOAs, or the forever chemicals. These are also in plastics. And PFOAs they're now discovering they're in literally everything. They're in the foam sprayed from fire trucks. They're in your sofa, the plastic covering, or even the vinyl that your sofa is made from. They're in your vinyl flooring. They're in unless your carpet is all wool, they're in your carpet. They're just in everything. And these chemicals cause cancer, quite simply. They're totally bad for human health. And so there are law firms starting to sue now. And in Wisconsin, the big lawsuit industry for suing all of these plastic companies for putting forever chemicals into our world. Horses out of the barn, but it is good that they're going after, because then maybe it will stop. To stop the flow of money is to stop the problem. And you can't address the problem without doing that. So it is good. The global plastic waste polluters, we see the extent of plastic in our world, and we assume that it's many companies, which it is, but actually the huge problem is down to 20 companies, including ExxonMobil, maker of gas, Dow Chemical, maker of pesticides, part of our huge food industry, and China's Sinopec, which makes a bunch of plastic products. These three companies produce 55% of the 130 million tons of single-use plastic waste in 2019. So if you want to start by boycotting companies that do the most, you can boycott these three companies. Again, I discussed this a little bit before, but to resume, recycling plastic is an illusion. And Greenpeace said that plastic recycling has largely failed and will always fail. Why? Just because there's too much plastic and recycling can't be done effectively with plastic at this amount that we're producing and that we've got. Another reason is because you can't hold the poorest people to be the ones who are responsible for the recycling. And it's the poorest people around the world who are responsible for the plastic waste. Quite simply, if you're worried about where your next meal is coming from, you're not going to be worried about recycling your plastic bottle. So recycling is mostly a matter of luxury. You have to be well off and at a good point in order to care about recycling. And that's not enough. We need everyone to recycle, and that's not going to happen as long as we have the poor with us. And as Jesus said, the poor will always be with us. So how can we solve this problem, there's something called extended producer responsibility. And this is happening in Maine and Oregon, where it started, or started in the US. Thomas Lindquist of Sweden was the one who started it initially, and it's based on the polluter pays principle. So basically, the polluter, the company getting all the ones we just read about, for example, or I just showed you on the previous slide, but the company making all the money from the plastic bottles or whatever has to be responsible for recycling those plastic bottles at the end of the life. So that is how to solve this problem. And the UN also in the early 2000s agreed to on a resolution to end plastic pollution with a legally binding international agreement by 2024, which is coming up next year. So we'll see. Coming shortly, actually, in a matter of a few weeks. So we will see if this extended producer responsibility takes off. Of course, there's going to be a big fight by lobbyists for all of these multinational companies because they, of course, don't want to be responsible for the recycling or paying the taxes in order to recycle these products. So our addiction to single-use plastics. What is the answer to the problem? And here's where I want to address you as Christians, as members of communities of faith, just as citizens of the world. This plastic problem comes from single-use plastics. And single-use plastics are just what they sound like. They're a plastic product made from petrochemicals and disposed of immediately after using. So they're made from cellulose, natural gas, crude oil at the very beginning, as we saw at the beginning of the presentation. And there are all of these things that you see that are used for an average life of 12 minutes in our world and then go into waste. And as we saw, they're sticking around for 500 to 1,000 years once they get into waste. They're your straw, your plastic straw. They're your plastic cup on your coffee. They're your balloon for your child's birthday party. They're your plastic cup to drink your drink from Starbucks. They're a plastic bag from the grocery store. They're litter and what animals pick up. They are millions and millions and millions and trillions of plastic bottles. And they are your plastic waste. And here is where they stay in our world for 500 to 1,000 years as plastic waste in our environment. So this, of course, countries have started addressing this problem. And I include this list of countries to show that the US, except for California, is greatly behind on this problem. I mean, look at it. So we start with the most recent, 2023, the UK extended a ban to trays, balloon sticks, and some styrofoam. California, of course, and then India in 2022 banned straws, cutlery, earbuds, packaging films, balloon sticks, cigarette packets, and more. Also in 2022, Canada bans, and Kenya and the Pacific nation of Vanuatu ban, and then Taiwan and Australia passed single-use plastic bans. In 2017, Kenya announced anyone using, producing, or selling a plastic bag faces 4 years in jail or a $38,000 fine. That's a bit draconian, but honestly, sometimes when I think of how the US and we Americans waste this plastic and add it to our world, I'm almost for this. And then in 2016, France was the first one to pass a total ban on plastic cups, plates, and cutlery. And that's what needs to happen. There are alternatives for all of these single-use plastics. And I want to say that I'll give you my contact information at the end of this presentation. And I myself have spent maybe 15 years trying to find substitutes so we don't use these single-use plastics in my family, in our family. So I will give you some of those examples and tell you where to find that and contact me at the end. When will the US ban single-use plastics? Well, again, California passed a plastic ban in 2014, and they discovered from that ban that plastic bag usage was reduced by 85%, and coastal pollution, of course, was also reduced. So it's just a matter of all of the states joining California and starting with, let's ban single-use plastics. So what is a Christian to do? Well, for one thing, you can quit cold turkey. And this is what I did at a certain point, maybe 12 years ago. It was just too hard. And so I just made a vow to myself that I would not use any of these items, these single-use plastic items that we have listed here. Plastic straws, plastic water bottles, coffee cups with plastic lids, plastic bags, the produce plastic bags, takeout containers, plastic wrap, plastic forks and spoons and knives, plastic party cups, and six-pack rings. Now, do I still use those? Of course, I fail. I fail way too often. But the idea is that I made a vow that I will not use these. And that vow keeps me to not failing as often as I would. And I have been putting out a weekly tips on the St. Mark's Episcopal Church newsletter. And this presentation is also going to go on the diocesan website, Creation Care website, as I've said. But also, please contact me. I have found alternatives for each and every one of these items on the list. And you can contact me at S as in Sarah, M as in Marie, Streed, STREED, D as in David, at sbcglobal.net. That's SMSTREED at sbcglobal.net. And please reach out to me. And for our last slide, this is what I want you to remember. Remember, perfect is the enemy of good, as Voltaire said. And Voltaire was the one who said, everyone needs to just cultivate their own garden. In other words, these problems are overwhelming. And I'm sure if you're watching this, you yourself have felt the despair and discouragement and terror that I have felt at our climate emergency and what can we do? And then just remember, perfect is the enemy of good. Just begin. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to eliminate every single bit of plastic from our world or from your life. The important thing is to go on and keep trying. Good luck, and thank you so much.